Hey Cowboys Nation! Let's cut through the noise for a second because something is finally starting to come together in Dallas. The way this franchise has been moving lately makes more sense than it has in a long time, and it's not just a coincidence. The Christian Parker hire has been a lightning rod for opinions. But the truth is, anyone who truly understands football can see just how big of a step this is. This is not a superficial addition or a feel-good move. This is a serious upgrade in the defensive backfield. And it's a sign that the Cowboys are ready to stop treating defense like an afterthought. Now, I've seen a lot of people acting like they know what they're talking about, but clearly they don't. They act like Christian Parker is just another name, just another coordinator, but he is not. He's a coach who has proven he can develop talent and create a real identity on defense. And let's be clear, hiring him is only the first step. The real work begins now. Because if you don't give him the right pieces, all the talk in the world won't turn into wins. The Cowboys needed serious help in the secondary, and they finally addressed it. But the question now is whether the organization is going to commit to building around that decision. This offseason is shaping up to be one of the most important in recent Cowboys history. And I'm not saying that lightly. This is the moment where the organization has to decide if they are going to truly commit to winning a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott, or if they are going to keep dancing around the issue and hoping everything magically works out. The window with Dak is real, and it is not going to stay open forever. Every move this team makes this offseason will either extend that window or start closing it. The coaching staff, the free agency decisions, the draft strategy, the trades. The whole plan needs to be aligned. This is not a time for half measures or being cute. This is a time for boldness, for clarity, and for building a defense that can actually win in the playoffs. And when I say build a defense that can win in the playoffs, I mean a defense that can do the things that matter. When the lights get bright, you need pressure, you need discipline. You need a secondary that doesn't fold under stress. And you need a unit that can create turnovers when the game is on the line. The Cowboys have had the offense for years. They've had explosive plays, big numbers, and a quarterback who can win you games, but the defense has been the missing piece. It's been the reason this team has repeatedly fallen short when it mattered most. And the time to fix that is now. The first big chapter in this story is the free agency period, because that's where the Cowboys are going to have to make some real decisions. There are important dates coming up, and you need to understand what they mean. The East-West Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl in late January are not just another part of the offseason calendar for the Cowboys. They're a chance for coaches like Aaron Glenn and Lunda Wells to get hands-on with the prospects and start identifying who can actually contribute. That kind of access is invaluable, and it can give the Cowboys an edge in the draft. When you have coaches in the room evaluating players directly, you're not just relying on film and metrics. You're seeing how guys respond in person, how they handle coaching, and how they fit into your scheme. Then February brings the Super Bowl hype. And right after that comes the deadline for franchise and transition tags. That's when we're likely to see the Cowboys make their first major roster move. And if you're a real fan who pays attention, you already know what's coming. Expect George Pickens to get the franchise tag. This is not the Cowboys saying they don't want to commit long term. This is them saying to the rest of the league, hands off our guy. It's a protective move. And it's a smart one, because if you don't protect your top talent, someone else will swoop in and take it. That window between mid-February and early March is going to be critical. Once March hits, the real chaos begins. The tampering period opens, and then the new league year starts, and everything becomes official. That's when free agency really gets loud, and the Cowboys will need to be ready to move quickly. The question is, will they have the cap space to make meaningful moves? And the answer is yes. Because the Cowboys have a real opportunity to open up a huge amount of cap space if they handle things smartly. There are several contracts that can be restructured to free up money, and there are also players who could be released to create even more room. This is where the front office needs to show that they're not just talking about being aggressive. They actually mean it. The numbers are staggering when you look at what the Cowboys could potentially unlock. With restructures alone, they can create a huge amount of cap flexibility. And if they decide to release a couple of veterans who are not fitting into the future plan, that number goes up even more. Some fans will freak out and say you can't cut this guy or you can't let that guy go, but you have to understand the bigger picture. This is about building a roster that can win now and sustain success over the next few years. Sometimes that means making tough decisions, even if the player has been solid in the past. The goal isn't to keep a roster full of veterans who don't fit the scheme or the timeline. The goal is to build a defense that can actually stop teams when it matters most. Now, the Cowboys have to be strategic about who they keep and who they let go. Some players should stay because they still have value and fit what the team is trying to do. Others might be more valuable as cap savings. And this is where the Cowboys can actually position themselves as one of the most active teams in free agency if they want to be. They can create room not just to re-sign their own guys, but to bring in impactful players who can immediately upgrade the roster. This is where the next phase of the offseason starts to become exciting. Because if the Cowboys play this right, they can completely reshape their defense. One of the biggest moves I would target is adding a pass rusher who can change the dynamic of the front if the Cowboys can bring in a player like Trey Hendrickson. That's the kind of addition that makes a statement. That's the kind of player who can immediately improve the defense and create pressure that the current roster simply doesn't generate consistently. And once you get that kind of impact player, the rest of the pieces start to fall into place. You don't need 10 new starters. You need a few key difference makers who can elevate the unit. Once the Cowboys secure that pass rusher, the next priority has to be building the secondary round Christian Parker system. This is where the real blueprint starts to show up. You need players who understand how to play aggressive, how to read the field, and how to communicate under pressure. That's why a veteran safety like Justin Simmons becomes such an intriguing option. He has already proven he can play at a high level under Parker, and he brings leadership and intelligence to a group that desperately needs it. Simmons has been picky in free agency before, and he sat out last season because he was waiting for the right opportunity. But he is still in his early 30s, still productive, and he's the kind of presence that can immediately raise the level of the secondary. The Cowboys are not going to be shy about bringing in veteran defenders. They understand that the best defenses in the league are often a blend of young stars and seasoned vets. You draft the talent, but you also need players who know how to win, who can mentor the younger guys, and who can keep the room calm when the pressure gets intense. That is exactly why these moves make sense, and why the Christian Parker hire is so important. He is not just a coordinator. He is a developer of talent. He knows how to turn raw prospects into reliable starters. And that is something the Cowboys have been missing for too long. The pieces are all lining up. The Cowboys have the cap space, the coaching direction, and the need. All they have to do now is be aggressive and proactive. If they get the right veterans in place, then they can draft the young talent and create a defense that is both physical and smart. That is the blueprint. That is the vision. And it is not complicated. It just requires commitment and execution. The Cowboys have the opportunity to do something special, and I hope they don't waste it. Now, let's keep going because the story doesn't stop with free agency. The draft is going to be just as important, and honestly, it might be the biggest piece of the puzzle. The Cowboys have to get this right because you cannot build a championship defense only through free agency. You need young talent that can grow, develop, and stay with the team for years. That is why the draft is so crucial. You want players who can become long-term starters, not just stopgap pieces. And with the way the roster is shaping up, the Cowboys need to focus on players who can actually fit the scheme and bring that physicality and playmaking ability that has been missing. The first thing you have to understand about this draft is that the Cowboys are not just drafting for need, they are drafting for impact. That means you're looking for players who can step in and contribute right away, but also have the potential to become stars. The defensive backfield is obviously the priority, but you can't ignore the front seven either. You need edge rushers, you need linebackers who can cover and tackle, and you need a defensive line that can win one-on-one matchups. The Cowboys have been too reliant on the same old players for too long, and it's time to inject some fresh talent that can actually change the game. One of the biggest mistakes teams make in the draft is trying to force players into roles they don't fit. The Cowboys cannot do that. They have to be honest about what these players are, what they can become, and how they will fit into Christian Parker's system. You don't draft a guy because he has a good highlight reel. You draft a guy because he has the traits that will translate to the NFL, and because he fits what you're trying to build. That is why the scouting process matters so much, and why the East-West Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl matter. The Cowboys need to use those opportunities to find players who are not just talented, but coachable and tough now. Let's talk about the big picture. The Cowboys are not just trying to improve, they are trying to transform. And that transformation has to be more than just a new coordinator or a couple of free agent signings. It has to be a shift in identity. This team needs to become a defense-first franchise again. Because if you want to win a Super Bowl, you have to be able to stop teams when the pressure is highest. Offense wins games, sure, but defense wins championships. The Cowboys have had the offense for years, and that has been the story. But the defense has been the missing piece. And that is what they have to fix. Christian Parker's arrival should be seen as the start of a new era. A guy who knows how to coach, knows how to develop players, and knows how to build a unit that plays together. But he cannot do it alone. The Cowboys have to surround him with the right players. That means adding veterans who understand winning and can lead, while also drafting young playmakers who can grow into the system. It means building a defense that is aggressive, physical, and disciplined. It means building a team that doesn't get exposed in big moments. That is the goal, and that is the standard. And let's be honest, the Cowboys have had enough of being close. Too many times we've seen this. Team look good in the regular season, then fall apart when it matters most. That has to end. The front office has to stop treating the defense like an afterthought. They have to treat it like the centerpiece, because if you want to win the Super Bowl, you need a defense that can handle pressure, that can create turnovers, and that can make game-changing plays. That is what the Cowboys have been missing. And that is what they need to fix now. The good news is that the pieces are there. The coaching staff is being built, the cap space is being created, and the draft capital is available. The Cowboys have the chance to be one of the most active and most aggressive teams in the entire league. They can bring in veterans who can help immediately, and they can draft young talent that can develop into stars. But it all comes down to one thing: execution. If the Cowboys hesitate, if they overthink, if they get caught up in drama or pride, they will lose this window. The time for talk is over. Now it's time for action. Before we roll on, subscribe to Cowboys Wire News, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Your support keeps the Dallas Cowboys updates coming. Tell us what you think in the comments. The NFL rumor mill went into overdrive as league circles buzzed with speculation that Dak Prescott's long association with the Dallas Cowboys may be nearing a dramatic end. While nothing has been formally stamped with official language, the tone around the situation has shifted from distant possibility to urgent chatter, the kind that usually precedes a seismic move. Insiders close to the quarterback's camp suggest that conversations behind closed doors have taken on a finality rarely heard in previous negotiations, fueling the belief that Prescott himself has quietly acknowledged the change is coming. For years, Prescott has been the face of stability in Dallas, a leader who embodied the franchise's hopes and frustrations in equal measure. Yet stability in the NFL is often an illusion, and the current climate around the Cowboys hints at philosophical differences that may no longer be bridgeable. Salary cap maneuvering, long-term vision, and the relentless pressure to redefine success have all been cited as undercurrents in this unfolding narrative. Sources describe a locker room caught between loyalty and realism, aware that modern football rarely waits for sentiment around the league. Executives are said to be monitoring the situation with intense interest. A quarterback of Prescott's profile does not linger in uncertainty without consequence. Speculation ranges from a strategic reset in Dallas to the possibility that Prescott is seeking an environment better aligned with his personal ambitions and legacy. The silence from official channels has only amplified the noise, allowing theories to flourish and expectations to rise. Whether this moment becomes a clean break or a dramatic pivot remains unclear. But the mere idea of Prescott stepping away from the star on his helmet has already altered the NFL's emotional landscape. In a league built on power moves and perception, sometimes the rumor itself is enough to change everything. That's a wrap from Cowboys Wire News. For breaking Cowboys updates, subscribe, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Tell us your take in the comments.